Join us as we dive into the history, hauntings, and high strangeness of the world to try to better understand the paranormal. I will be your guide. I am paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman Sims. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unseen Paranormal. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the show. Today we got a great guest for you. We're talking to a paranormal researcher and author, Mr. Ian Gibbs. Ian is from northern British Columbia in Canada. So we're going to go north of the United States and talk about some history and hauntings up in Canada. And talk to Mr. Ian about being an empath. And I've talked about that a lot on my show. Me and him have a lot of similarities, so that's cool. Had a great conversation with him. Really enjoyed it. He's a great guy to talk to. Before then, I just want to let y'all know, we are snowed in Nashville as of me recording this. We have 6 inches of snow on this Monday morning, and it's still snowing. And this is unusual. We haven't had this in probably 10 years, and it only happens about once every 10 years. And in the South, if you're not familiar with the traditions of the South, whenever they say it's going to snow, everybody runs to the store and buys milk, bread, and eggs. And it's ridiculous. They were even showing on the news. They're like, people are having to wait 45 minutes, an hour in line at the grocery store because people act like we're going to be fucking snowed in for days. And it's like, okay, you can't handle a couple of days of, being stuck in your house. But I call it day one of the hostage situation because my Jeep is parked for the winter, so I don't have a four-wheel drive to get out in the shit. But anyway, on to the show and Mr. Ian Gibbs. Y'all enjoy. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time. Hey, Ian, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Eric. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, it's frosty and cold up here a bit. Things are good.
Yeah. You're up in British Columbia, and you can keep all that cold air.
Yeah, northern British Columbia.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely chillier, but that's all right.
I bet it's cool. I bet you can see the northern lights up there. Are you that far?
Oh,
up?
Big time. We could see them in the summer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I just moved here in April. I've lived in down south in Victoria for 23 years. So moving up here was, it was like going back to my childhood because I grew up in Alberta, Calgary, which is very similar climate. So for me, it's like, okay, I know what to expect. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, you're going to go up there and die. And I'm like, thanks for that. But no, it's fine. I have a remote start for the car. I'm good. Right.
Well, kind of when you grow up, like you said, when you grow up in that climate, you're kind of used to it with the snow and the cold and all that stuff.
I mean, I'm a little nervous. It's supposed to go, so it's been super mild up here, but it's supposed to go to minus 20 this week. And I have not experienced that since I lived in Winnipeg like 24 years ago. So I'm a little, I mean, I got hats, mitts, gloves, boots. I'm good to go that way. But mentally, So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's 42 here today in Tennessee.
Oh my God!
So
nice.
It's 42 Fahrenheit, and so it's not real cold, but it's not warm. And I'm a hermit when it gets cold. I don't like the cold, so.
And I work from home, so I do have that option.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's me too. So but here I live in the South, so we don't. If we got negative 20, everything would just come to a halt.
Yeah, well, that cold snap in Texas. Remember that cold snap in Texas?
Yeah.
What was it, last year, a couple years ago? It literally froze the state. Like they didn't know what to do, and there was all this damage, and it's just what you're ready for, I think. Yeah. And if you live in a climate and you're ready for it, same with the extreme heat. I hate extreme heat, so I turn into a puddle. So I would rather have the cold where I can go and warm up than the heat where I can't get away from it.
So let's get into the books and the ghost stories. That's what people are here for, the ghost stories. Yeah. So how did you get into the paranormal to begin with, to come to write the books?
Yeah, well, I think you touched on the Scottish and Irish people, and that's where I was born. I was born in England. And we emigrated to Canada when I was about 4.5. And I always had a weird, even as a kid in England, I had a weird sense of buildings, places, sometimes people, and my mom would go, no, you're making it up, it's your imagination, so right from an early age it was like, no, don't trust what you feel, don't trust what you experience. You're making it up. And then we immigrated to Canada. We went to Calgary, which is the Bible Belt of Canada, essentially one of them, through southern BC and through southern Alberta is pretty hardcore Bible Belt. And my parents got absolutely caught up in that. So I was raised like very evangelical. So I couldn't go to school on Halloween and, you know, all these things. So that just made my life worse. Because as I got older, I was experiencing more and more. And I was being now told that it was evil, it was demons, it was Satan, and I better run away from it kind of thing. And you know, rebuke that. So that wasn't good. And it wasn't until, ironically, but these things kept happening. Like, it wasn't like I went, okay, I'm just not going to experience it anymore.
Right.
Like, it kept happening all the time. And I learned weirdly, because I was in complete isolation with this stuff. There was no internet because I'm old. And so I kind of just sort of, I don't even know how. I remember being 11 years old and feeling the house was really dark and I was scared. And I remember being scared and freaked out by my house. And I remember thinking of a giant, beautiful, pure, powerful white light coming out of me and filling my room. And then I did it again. And I did my room and my brother's room. And then my room, my brother's room, and the hallway. And I literally did it that way, like that systematically through the whole house. I did the basement, I did the garage, the backyard, I did the front yard. And then I went to sleep. And it stayed for that kind of protection, stayed for about 2 weeks. There was a marked difference in the house. I remember my mom commenting on it, like, oh, the house seems brighter. Like, she wasn't ever going to admit, but she even noticed. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know how I learned that, but I knew it worked. And so that was kind of my way of managing it after that, was just project the white light, project the bright light. And it wasn't until, ironically, I went to Bible college in Toronto, and I met a young lady from the east coast of Canada, from Newfoundland. And we were talking, you know how you tentatively talk about ghosts with people you don't know very well.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, I experience things too. And I said, and what do you experience around here? And she looked at me and she stopped and she goes, a lot. And she goes, I have an idea. You go in the living room and you write a list of places 1 through 10. You find the creepiest, number 1 being the creepiest, 10 being, you know, the lesser. I'm going to do the same in the dining room, and we'll come back together and see how our lists compare. So we did that. And when we got back together, our lists were identical, even in number placement, except for 9 and 10 was switched. I had, you know, her number 10 is 9 and her 9 was my 10. Yeah. Other than that, identical. It freaked me out, but it also made me go, okay, this is not all in my head. This is real. This is not stupid. This is something. And from there, it morphed into me just being fascinated by ghost stories, but also living in that haunted college was a bit of a wake-up call, because it was a much more active haunting than I'd been used to. So I, you know, handled that bravely like a man and tried to never be alone there, which didn't always work out. But it freaked me out. It freaked me out. And I didn't feel like I really had a lot of control over it, because I knew I didn't own the place. I knew it was my place to own. So I moved on from there, lived in a few haunted places, got a lot of experience, and then ended up in Victoria. And I'd been living there about 10 years. And a friend said to me, hey, we're going on this ghost tour. And I've always wanted to do that. He was from out of town. And he goes, you should come. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So I went. And the guy who owned the company gave our tour. And I remember walking around with him going, oh my God, this is it. I love the history. I love the mystery. This is it. This is my sweet spot. This is making me so happy. So after the tour, I said to him, do you need any more guides? And he's like, not really. And he goes, but you know, we could have coffee if you want. I'm like, okay. So I went and had coffee with him. And afterwards he's like, I think I'd like you to be one of my guides. So I did that for 10 years. And my second year doing the guiding, or maybe it was my first Halloween, I don't remember. Basically, we would do 90-minute tours twice a night, and you were entirely responsible for keeping these people amused for 90 minutes, telling them stories. And afterwards, a lot of people want to tell you their stories, or, you know, whatever. It's all good. Yeah. And this one lady stayed behind, and she started asking me questions, and I'm answering them. And then she stopped, and she gave me a kind of appraising look, and she goes, do you write the way you speak? And I said, well, that's interesting you say that. I've actually been told that before, but I haven't done a whole lot of writing, just something I've kind of played around with. And she goes, because I want a book on Victoria ghost stories, and I want your voice telling it. And she gives me this business card, and I'm like, okay, scammer, like, one of those, will publish your poems for only $1,500,
Right.
those books. So I Googled and checked her out, and sure enough, it was a legitimate, kind of boutique-y publishing house in Victoria. And I went to see her, and I signed a book contract, and that's how it all started. So I wrote Victoria's Most Haunted, and I remember when the book was coming out, I worked on it for a year, and then it took another 6 months to get kind of, edited and processed and all that stuff, because it's a full-on deal. And I remember the day before the book launch, I was like, okay, this is it. There's no going back. Everyone's going to know me as that ghost guy. Like, there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I now have to wave a flag kind of thing, and I'm never going to be able to put that flag down. And then the book came out, and it did really, really well. And they came back to me and said, hey, you know what? You've hit it. Like, this is great. This is a good formula. This is what's working. People love this. You want to do another city? Pick one. We don't care what it is. We'll publish it. I'm like, okay. So then I did Vancouver, and that was harder because I've never lived in Vancouver. So I had to really go and not only research the stories, I had to research the places because I didn't know anything. But it was good. It was a good exercise. It was a struggle. That book was a bit of a struggle. And then Calgary, which is where I grew up, I said, what about Calgary? And they're like, done. And that one just flew out of me. That was crazy. It's going to be my longest book ever, even when the editors are done with it. So, but that was a lot of fun to write. And now I'm going to be signing a contract next month for Canada's Most Haunted. And that I asked them to give me. He said, like, well, when do you want it delivered? Like October 2025? And I'm like, no, October 2024. And I'm like, how about 2025? And published 2026. And they're like, well, okay. And I'm like, yes. Because it is going to be a bit of a bigger thing, because I like to go to where those stories are.
Right.
So I don't just write the history of it and the ghost stories. I like to go and then say, and this is my impression of this place.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is how I feel here. And I think that's the piece that makes it a bit different and that people connect to. And that was scary to not just say I believe in ghosts, but also I can sense them. Right. I guess that was a bit scary. That was a vulnerable thing. But no, it's been nothing but positive. It's been good. It's been a really good thing to do. And now I get, in the meantime, I did a podcast for 4 years with another guy, and then that was done. And so I started one with my partner. So my husband, Jason, and I started Ghosts and Bears about 3 years ago. And it's been rough just the last 6 months or so. We moved to Prince George. We started new jobs. Like, you know what it's like to get a podcast out. So we did drop from every 2 weeks to once a month just because I was sinking. But we're hoping to get back to every 2 weeks. I think that would be great. But now he's doing his MBA, so who knows? It'll just be story time with Uncle Ian. But no, it's been good. And the podcast has done really well. We've got a really solid group of people who well, you get your people who are just on your side, on your team kind of thing, and we've definitely got those, and I'm so grateful for them. And but the more I learn from them, the more I learn. So as people are sending me stories, and this is my experience, and a lot of it is that's a haunting for sure, and that's pretty typical. And then someone will tell you a story and you'll just go, what? Like, that is crazy. Not crazy unbelievable, crazy that it happened that way. Like, I love those make me so happy. But I'm always happy to hear other people's stories, because I'm not a ghost hunter. That's something that people are a little confused about. I don't go on ghost hunts. I don't go on paranormal hunts. And not because they're not good and fun. They're just not for me. I think people go on those looking for proof. I don't need proof. I'm good. I have been on, Jason and I went on a show called The Other Side, and it's going to be airing. It's airing this year. It's airing anytime, honestly. And we had quite a profound experience on there, using EKG, not EKG, EMF. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, EMF, thank you. Not heart monitors. That would be weird. Cool, but weird. So we used EMF meters and with two investigators on the show. And someone came through personally for Jason. and was
Wow.
answering questions only Jason knew the answers to and answered them correctly. And he ended up just bursting into tears. It was intense. And that was the most intense thing I've ever experienced. That felt like hitting the ghost lottery, honestly,
Yeah.
when someone you're not even looking for comes through and brings you some peace around some issues. Like, it was crazy. So yeah, it's called The Other Side. It's on the APTN network, which is our Aboriginal People's Television Network here in Canada, but you can also see it on the Lumi app, Lumi. And it's, yeah, The Other Side. It's a great show. I was really impressed with them. They're not faking anything. I was so dubious, like, you know, the hard and cynical.
Yeah.
The hard and cynic, but no, they were bang on. So I was impressed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, do let me know what you think.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one of the things that you said about kind of putting yourself out there, that's kind of the way I feel with I'm going on 4 years of doing this show, and I never really talked about being an empath and feeling things and that type of stuff to really anybody outside of my circle. And,
I get it. You know when I would talk about it, honestly, at a dinner party, after the dinner's over, everyone's had a bit of wine.
Yeah,
it's like 11:30 at night. Everyone's feeling good. And someone would bring it up, and I'd be like, well, let me tell you, you know, like I would jump in on that, and I would be comfortable then. But the same thing, I didn't go around talking about it. No way.
Yeah.
And part of that, I think, is the way, me personally, and maybe you too, being in the Bible Belt, the way you're raised is you don't talk about it. It's not something that, it's like talking about religion or politics, you know, it's not something you do because it's so polarizing. But when it's such a huge part of you, I mean, I use it every day when I meet people. Every day. Yeah. And I don't know what I would do without it, to be honest with you, at this point. I honestly don't know what I would do without it.
Yeah, when I was younger, I tried to kind of squash it and push it down, and it felt like a part of me was missing. It's hard to describe to people who don't.
No, I get it. Yeah. I 100% get it. And when you are in the zone with it, I mean, I talk about this in the Victoria book about someone had asked me to go to their house and check some stuff out because some weird stuff was happening. And I remember getting out of the car thinking, can I still do this? Is this really going to happen? Like, I have no control over it. And I'm not going to go in there and lie to you. But I'm also always nervous. Like, am I going to be able to feel anything? Like, is this going to work? It always does. Yeah. But I constantly doubt it. I don't doubt the results anymore. I don't go, well, this is what I'm picking up, but who knows? You know, I don't do that anymore. But I always doubt that it's actually going to work. It's actually going to happen, I guess, is what I mean.
Yeah. I think for me, that's why I've been a paranormal investigator for over 20 years and researcher is not to necessarily prove to myself that the afterlife exists, because I've been haunted my whole life and had experiences my whole life. But it's more to prove to myself that I'm not crazy for what I feel and think and know.
Right. And for me, I remember at some point going, who cares? You think I'm crazy? I don't care. I don't care what you think. Yeah. Like you do, be who you want to be. And I remember being in a car with two brothers, and we went on a trip together, and we stopped at this old hotel in the middle of the mountains in California. Like, there was like the hotel and a post office, and we had to use the bathroom. That's why we stopped. And I walked in the hotel and I was like, like it was a gut punch. Like, it was like, wow, this is so heavy. Yeah. And the one brother came in with me, and he didn't believe in any of it. No, none of this is real. You're making it up, blah, blah, blah. The other brother, who did not know what we were experiencing or talking about, he took his dogs into the yard of the hotel to, run around, go to the bathroom, whatever. One of his dogs was clueless just in general, but the other dog looked at the hotel and started growling and backing away. And he's never seen the dog do that. And he got a feeling then. He was like, oh, there's something wrong with this building.
Yeah.
We get back in the car, and I didn't say anything to the brother with the dogs. And we get back in the car, and he says to me, so what's going on in that place? And I said, well, something's going on. Like, it's weird. There's some very angry people in there, and I don't mean living. And the other brother's like, no, it's bullshit. I don't believe it. Blah, blah, blah. And the two brothers start fighting. The one brother's like, don't be disrespectful to Ian. And I'm like, no, Ian's good. Like, but it solidified for me. Like, I don't have anything to prove. My experience is my experience. No one can tell you your experience is wrong. Right? No one can tell you that. So as long as you know that, well, say what you want. Oh, I think that's bullshit. Well, of course you do. You didn't experience it. But, I did. That's all I know. That's all I can tell you. Whether you believe it or not my problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason for me, the ghost investigation thing, and plus I get bored easily. Like, I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of sitting around at ghost investigations and waiting for something to happen sometimes.
And
I get bored. I'm like, no, I know me. I'm going to pull up my phone and start playing some game designed for a grade 5 girl. Like, I know that. So why waste my time, lose a night's sleep? But I have a lot of respect for it. Like, go for it and do it. Don't treat it like a sport, though. Like, I'm big on that. Like, you treat that energy that's there with respect. They're just people. They're not some alternate being. They're just people. So like you with people.
Yeah, and part of my mission, kind of with the show, especially in the past year, has been to educate people more about a lot of the American TV is bullshit, like with Ghost Adventures and douchebagging. People are finally catching on that not everything's demons, and so now my battle is against cultural appropriation with Native American cultures, because it pisses me off, because I'll see these videos on YouTube where people in England are saying that we have skinwalkers at this location. No, you don't.
You don't even know what that is.
That's a Navajo thing in the Midwest United States. They don't exist outside of that. There's a certain they have shamans have to go through a certain ritual to become skinwalkers in the Navajo culture. So there might be shapeshifters and other things outside of that culture.
Sure.
But it's not a skinwalker,
I know.
And so that's the new buzzword now. But anyway, that's what I'm battling against now.
I think that's a good thing to do, because you're right. You're 100% right.
Yeah, and people want to argue, and it's like, whatever. But we're trying to teach people, and I've seen a shift as well, especially in the social media world of all the paranormal groups and things. But trying to teach people, no, that's a lens flare. Not everything's paranormal. Like, I don't want to take away from your experience and say you didn't experience something, but your picture is a lens flare. It's not something paranormal. There's an explanation for that, and
100%. And people don't want to hear that, and I understand why they don't. But I'm also not big into orb pictures and orb videos.
Yeah.
In fact, with the world of deep fake and AI now, I don't even know that I trust videos.
Yeah.
And part of that for me is I don't think I've ever seen a ghost. I've heard them. I sense them big time. They're able to shove thoughts and memories into my head like I'm watching a movie.
Yeah.
But I've never seen a ghost. So for me, the visual evidence, because it's so easy to fake now. It's so easy to fake. So that kind of broke my heart when that happened, because the Holy Grail was getting something on film.
Right.
That was kind of the Holy Grail. But now, kid with a laptop can make that happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was an early dismisser of orbs, just because for me they just don't strike me as anything. However, other people have been there and said it was creepy, it was weird, things were happening, and we saw these orbs. Okay, then 100%. That's for you.
Right.
It's just not going to do anything for me, and that's okay. That's all right.
Yeah. I've actually seen orbs with my own eyes before.
Oh, that would be wild.
And I don't know, and I'm not going to tell you it was something paranormal. It may be something atmospheric, maybe static electricity or something.
If you're seeing it with your own eyes, though, I mean, I would tend to think it was something trying to get your attention.
Yeah. I mean, it was in a documented place that we had other experiences. So but I'm just not one to jump to the paranormal explanation. I'm a skeptical believer. Like,
me too.
Me too. If I can throw out a piece of evidence, then I'll do it. I don't care how amazing it may be, whatever. And then if I put evidence online, anything that I catch that's weird, like in photos or whatever, I don't ever put it up there and say, this is evidence of a haunting. I put it up and say, what do y'all think about this? I have no explanation for this.
Yes.
I've talked to photographers, who have lots of experience. They can't explain this photo anomaly. This was the conditions. This is where I was at.
Yeah.
You tell me what you think,
No, I get it. I am very much that way. And I have talked with people about their own ghost stories. And I think the reason people will tell me their ghost stories is you are never going to hear coming out of my mouth the two phrases, no, I think you're wrong, or I don't believe you.
Right.
I'm never going to say those things because I can't judge that. I wasn't there, you
Right.
know. That was your experience, and as far as I'm concerned, if you had that experience, it happened.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I come from. But like you say, I think not everything's a demon, and I think the energy needs to be treated with respect. And I think there's often more than one energy, and there is a bit of a hierarchy amongst that energy. So you oftentimes will have like a spokesperson for the group.
Yeah.
Be they good, be they bad. But people have always, I said, people are like, why do you think we're so scared of ghosts? And I said, because we don't understand them, and we don't know what they want, and we can't communicate with them. And I said, but honestly, if someone was a good person in life, they're a good person in death. If they were a jerk in life, death seldom improves them, So there are jerks out there. There are people who would fool you or do you bad or do you wrong. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Most of the spirits I've run into, I'd say 90% of them are just good people who either don't know what's happened or are unaware that they're even dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Many times I tell people, my motto has become over the years, if you're an asshole in life, probably be an asshole in death.
You go.
Yeah.
We're
and
on
that's
the same page.
And that's what I tell people about demonic or malicious activity.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, go into a place respectfully, and that's what we do, because I believe that it's, for one, like you said, they're just people in a different form, and you're going into their environment,
100%.
And so, but also, I think the majority of us investigators and people, not just investigators, but people like you who are write the books and do the research and stuff, because we revere the history as well. And that we see it as a connection to people that we can't otherwise talk to.
Exactly. And history is so underrated. I mean, I have friends who, and we did a show on this, My Haunted House or whatever we were calling it. And they live in a brand new suburb. And I was there when they were building the house. Like, I saw them build the house, and they had this entity, female, who comes through and makes herself known and doesn't like the wife, but wants the husband and is fascinated by the kids. Yeah. And then they were like, but how can this be? Our house is brand new. I'm like, it's got nothing to do with your house.
Right.
And then a few months later, the husband was talking to another husband who lives, about 6 or 7 houses away. And this guy he goes, well, I've had some weird stuff happen in my house. And my friend was like, really? Do tell. And it was the exact same experiences.
Yeah.
So this woman, whoever she was, and I think she's probably First Nations, and she lost her family, and she wants her family back. And she is wandering around, basically, appropriating families because she wants her kids back. She misses her kids. She misses her husband. The wife got scratched and got her cell phone thrown across the room. And the husband, he likes to sit up and play video games. And his wife she goes to bed really, really early. And he said a lot of times he'd hear someone walking up and down the hall behind him. And eventually he said to her, please stop. You're freaking me out. And she went away.
Yeah.
But he heard her call his son when the wife was out of town, and the son was freaking out. Mommy's down there. I want mommy. And he goes, no, there's no one down there. He goes, come on. And he picked up his son, who was about 2.5, 3. And he took him to the top of the stairs, and it was, of course, dark downstairs. And he goes, see, look, there's nobody down there. And he actually heard his wife's voice say the child's name. And he's like, okay, we're going back to bed. You can sleep in my bed tonight. So they had some pretty intense things happening. But that's all tied to history. That's not tied to the house.
Right.
And so whenever people say that to me, I don't understand why my house would be haunted. It's new. I'm like, it's got nothing to do with the building.
Yeah.
Nothing to do. Sometimes it does. But more often than not, it's who was there before, and who was on that land before, and who owned that land before. Because sometimes in their minds, they still do.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to do private investigations of homes, and I don't do those anymore in the past 3 or 4 years. They're just, you don't know what you're getting into, especially nowadays, but going into a stranger's house and all that. But
right.
People with mental health issues and things. But anyway, the first thing that we would do when we get a call from a homeowner is research the land. Not even the house itself,
right?
But what happened on this land.
Yes.
And case in point, we had a case that we did a few years ago, one of the rare ones that we took. and this was a brand new neighborhood, but the neighbors had reported seeing Civil War soldiers walk down the road. And when I looked up the history of the land, the actual Nashville-Louisville highway with the old wagon trail actually went through that neighborhood.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And about half a mile the way the crow flies, they had an encampment up on a hill because it was the highest point around there.
Oh my gosh.
And so they brought wounded soldiers through there in bodies and everything else.
Yeah.
And these people were seeing a Civil War soldier manifest in their hallway.
Yeah.
And they had a little girl, and they called us in because the little girl was seeing something by her closet, and they had a nanny cam, like I guess not a nanny cam, but like one of the new baby monitors that had a camera on it. And it would alert them if she moved at night. And she was getting up out of the bed and talking to somebody in the corner.
Oh my God.
So it was scaring the parents. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was the land. It had nothing to do with their house.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And then other times, yes, it's the house. And like I just finished writing a book, a mini book, I guess I would call it, The House That Never Said Goodbye. And that came out of just someone reaching out to me who lives in a haunted house. And he he's had lots of TV shows through there. He gets a lot of paranormal groups there. He does private tours through the house because he's someone who didn't really he did not believe in the paranormal, but he wasn't a big paranormal guy. Yeah. And then he moved into this house that he's always loved. It's one of the older homes in town. It's in Drumheller, and Drumheller, Alberta, which is where the dinosaurs are. If you're from Canada, and now he's right into it. He knows who the ghosts are. He does things for them. He's respectful. And he got in touch with me and he goes, I just finished the Calgary book, like literally like the week before. And that was like 65,000 words. And he goes, hey, I'm just wondering, do you know of anybody who might be interested in, I've got the history of the house. I've got a thing of paranormal events, but I don't know what to do with it. And I'd like for people to be able to have something to take. And I thought, you know what? I'll do it. I've never done that before. I don't know anything about self-publishing. Let's learn. So I sat down and I'm looking at all the history and I'm looking at all the paranormal events. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to put this together? And then I went, oh, yeah. Because he had 7 pages of paragraphs of every time a paranormal event happened. And he dated them from 2015 to 2022. Or no, even before then. I wrote the book. I should know this. So I ended up dating each of the chapters with a paranormal event, and then I would kind of write it, but I would interweave the history with the event, and even do some like throwbacks to what the family that lived there. That two members of that family are the ghosts in this house. And there's others too, but they're the ones who kind of step forward the most. What they were saying at the time or what they were going through that may be tied to the paranormal event that's being experienced now. So it actually came out pretty great and I was pretty happy with it. And I just did the audiobook too. The owner of the home just got his first shipment of 100 books and he's thrilled. So yay, I'm glad. But yeah, it was a good experience. I'm glad I did it. It taught me a lot about my own process with nobody helping me. Yeah. And then also how to do the self-publishing thing, because it's available on like EPUB and book form and Audible. So I'm glad I did it all because now I know what I need to do, and it takes about a week to get everything up and on there. But because they check it, make sure you're not a Nazi or something. I don't know. No, it was good. It was good. So I'm definitely going to do that again. But that's my most recent project that just came out, was The House That Never Said Goodbye, and it's an interesting story. Yeah, really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love diving into that history and finding out things that even like the homeowner doesn't know. About their home and in the land, and educating them. Even going to public places that we go and investigate. That's one of my favorite things to do, is to dive into the history and find out things and ask questions. Yeah, we're doing EVP sessions and things, and try to get answers that other people haven't gotten and things. Yeah. But yeah, and like the individual houses are amazing too, because some of them have an incredible history. And I think the spirits are still there because they love the house.
Yeah.
And they're part of that history. And I think a lot of them, you said that he has tours through there and things like that. I think a lot of them want their story to be told and heard. And so I think
I agree with you.
A lot of people think it's disrespectful, but I don't. I think as long as the spirits are happy with it, you know, and you're being respectful, making sure respectful people are coming in there, I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because we had a phone call about the book, because it's the first place I've written about I've never been to. And that was a challenge, because I didn't have that energy connection to bounce off of. And that was a bit of a challenge for me, but it wasn't what he wanted. What he wanted was a little history and hauntings book that he could sell at the house. Right. And so I respected that. And we had a phone call about it. And I said, well, this is what I'm thinking. And I kind of told him what my concept was. And I said, I don't see this as a haunted house story. I see this as a family that loves the house story. You know, like, it's not scary. It's this is our house, and now we share it with these other people, kind of thing. And he goes, oh, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And that's exactly how we feel. And I said, great. Okay, good. And I said, and that's the story we're going to tell. And we're going to tell the story of the doctor and his daughter. And we're going to, we're going to do it that way. So I get off the phone with him, and about 3 or 4 minutes later, he sends me a little video, and he goes, I think Dr. Bob approves. And what he had set up, he has this little LED candle in front of a picture of Dr. Bob. And when they have a tour come through, he turns on the LED candle, because it's, for effect kind of thing. Yeah. And the candle just spontaneously started going off as Justin was going to go up the stairs. And he's like, he approves. He approves. He goes, I can feel the energy, and he's doing this for you. So he's good with it. And I'm like, perfect. Awesome. Yeah. But that was a delicate writing operation, because there's some speculation about how the doctor went. He was in World War One. But he was super involved in his community. He was like on the school board. He was a Mason. He was on the hospital board. He ran a successful dental practice. And then one day in October 1931 or 33 or 32, somewhere there, again, I should know this. He went downstairs to prepare for a hunting trip, quote unquote, and his gun accidentally went off in the garage and blew his head off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the story was, he was preparing for a hunting trip, and he accidentally blew his head off with a shotgun. I'm not sure how you do that. But anyway, that was really a sticking point, because the homeowner is very tied to the house and very tied to that energy of the doctor. And so I said to him, I'm really struggling on how to write this, because the newspaper reports intimate more than an accident, like, they're pretty clear. There was no coroner's inquest, because the doctor was of high standing in the community. Culturally, taking your own life was not an option for a respectable member of society. That's not what you did. And so, I mean, how many accidental overdoses or accidents happened over the course of 100 years? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So that's how they treated it. And then, like, 4 years later, his daughter died. She was 14. She got septicemia and died. Heartbreaking for the mom and the son. I can't even imagine. I cannot imagine. And then that's when the mom and the son eventually left the house. They just kind of, I think, gave up and moved to Edmonton, which is how most people end up in Edmonton. Oh, no, just kidding. Anywhere from Canada will get that joke. But no, they, in their grief, I think they just couldn't stay in the house. Yeah. But it was the doctor and the daughter who keep showing up. So it was a balancing act. And the first time I sent the homeowner what I'd written, he's like, I'm really uncomfortable with this. Like, I'm okay. Hey, cool. I mean, we're writing the story of your experience. So we don't have to come out and say anything. We can just go with what the news reports are and let people draw their own conclusions. And he's like, yeah, I would prefer that. I'm like, okay, then let's do it that way. So, yeah, I've never written a book kind of with somebody else before. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's always been like, okay, here's the story, here's the history, here's my interpretation. And that's the beautiful thing about ghost stories. But this time I actually had to consult somebody. Right. This time I had to be like, well, like, I wrote the first draft and I sent it to him, and I said, I have nothing about feelings, thoughts, perceptions, how you felt about this. Like, I need all of that. And he he added a bunch of stuff, some of which I could use, some of which I had to take out. But I just, again, lacking that personal connection it was a bit of a struggle, honestly. It was a bit of a, it was good, and it all worked out. And the book came together super fast. Like, I thought, oh, we'll probably publish in March. No. It was like 2 months from start to finish.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome, writing about individual locations. I love talking to people about that as well, because those are people that would have been otherwise forgotten in history.
Yes.
And
yes.
now in book form, you've kind of solidified some sort of place for them in history, that your book will be around for years and years to come.
Yeah. I was really happy with it. I'm happy with how it came out. It was a lot smaller than I thought. It's only 14,000 words. Like, it's not a big book. Yeah. But if you're selling it as something to sell in the house, it's perfect. It's exactly the kind of thing a tourist would love to grab and just read one evening. You know what I mean? So the book turned out to be exactly what it's supposed to be. And I don't know how much more we could have squeezed out of it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, without being ridiculous. That morning, the Dr. Bob had eggs and toast for breakfast. Like, no, no, please don't. But very different experience writing that book compared to my published my books that are published by a company, right? Because you don't have the supports. I mean, when you publish a book through a publishing company, my experience has been, I go through about 6 or 7 different people, right, who are all involved in that process. And so this time it was me alone. So I brought on some of my writing buddies and my fellow authors. And I'm like, can you read this? Just check this, and we do that for each other. But no, it was good. It was a good experience. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. And like I said, I love those type of books. And I love talking to people, guests on the show here, about those type of books, and I think they fascinate people because, like you said, he does tours and things, so people can go through there, and maybe they go because of the history. It's a nice historical house and whatever, and then they find out about the ghost, and so they can. Well, I've been there, and when you talk about this room having this experience, people can read that and see the experience. And things.
And it gets super personal. Like, it's a very personal kind of book on both the homeowner's side and the ghost side. It was a good experience to be. And I mean, we did the whole thing basically over email. Like, that was the cool part. We talked a couple times, but the whole thing was done basically just exchanging stuff over email. So that was wild. But on the flip side, it kind of made me go, oh, okay, I can do this. Like, this is a whole new world, but it's exciting. We'll see what happens. I would also be very honest with someone. If someone goes, hey, I live in a haunted house, let's write a book about it. And then you send me what you got. And I'm like, no, like, I can't, I'm not a talented enough writer to make something out of this, I'm afraid. Like, there's just not enough, there's not enough. There's nothing here that makes it different. What made, I think, this story different was the fact you had that personal journey the homeowner went on, from kind of nominal believer to full on embracing it and respecting it and actually caring about the spirits in his house. Like, that's a great story arc. And then you had the tragedy of how the ghosts that family had the house built for them. And 2 of them, half the family died, I mean, oh my God. So there's a definite kind of double-pronged story there. So not every story is going to be like that. Not every story is going to be a winner that way. So that's okay.
Yeah, like you're saying, it's fun to read the ghost stories and things from different locations that come from many different people over the years. It kind of adds up. But to have that personal connection when you're reading the book, I love that. I had a gentleman on not too long ago from England, and he wrote a book about his house being haunted, and he's lived there for 20 years now. And he wrote it similar to the way that you wrote that book, in chronological order. Nice. But it was nice because he still lives there, and so it was really cool to see and to have that connection, because by the end of the book you feel like you kind of know him a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's going to happen if you read this book too. You get to know Justin, right? Like you get to know this guy. Yeah, I would say it was neat. It was a neat journey to go on, and I'm glad we did it. And I love those personal stories too. That's kind of why I do what I do. So and my ghost books always have those personal stories, which is funny because a lot of ghost books don't. I found most of the ghost books on a place are usually kind of reporter style. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's alleged that, and so claims that, and I don't write that way. I don't write full on everything's a ghost. But I kind of try and find a happy medium there. A medium, it's a ghost joke. But I try and find something there that will work. But also, I do have the stories of the private homes, which you won't find a lot of. And I mean private homes as in I don't tell you where they are. But these people live in this city and this is the experience they had in their house. And when I was going to sign the contract for the Canada book, I said, well, obviously I won't put any of those in there. And my publisher was like, no, that's one of the things we love about your books is that not everywhere is a well-known public place.
Yeah.
There are those private ghost stories that hide within a city, you know? And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. So I'm going to have to reach out and find some cool people with cool houses in Canada to see if they want to be in the book.
I'm sure you probably won't have much of a problem with that.
I think I'll be okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about Victoria's Most Haunted.
Yeah.
In the book, in the introduction, one of the first things you say is that it's unique in that it is haunted. It's hardly unique that it's haunted, but there's reasons for it being so haunted.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane. It's unique. You know, it really should say it's unique that it is so haunted, like more ghosts per square inch kind of thing. Like one thing I've really discovered is the more steeped in history a place is, the more ghosts it's going to have. And that sounds very simplistic, but I don't mean just white people history.
Right.
So what I learned doing the tours was Victoria specifically was basically like New York City, Manhattan for the First Nations people. Some of the first white people who got there said you couldn't see the water of the Inner Harbor sometimes for all the canoes going back and forth, people going about their business. Like it was the place. And it makes sense. Weather-wise, you didn't have the harsh winters. The salmon came to you. Like, you know, like it was perfect for human life. And massive history there. And they had a very different approach to death than we did. They were all about, you know, their dead being around and being with them, not going somewhere else. And those beliefs are still affecting, I believe, the land today. And that may be why there's a lot of ghosts who stick around, because I think if you die and you see you're not alone, maybe you're more apt to hang out. You know what I mean? Like if you die and you're like, well, just me, guess I'm moving on. But if you die, and this is all theory, please don't take this as gospel. But you know, if you die and there's like 7 or 8 other people hanging out, you're like, hey guys, what's up?
Yeah.
I think that might have something to do with it. Because it is just so densely haunted. And you walk through the streets of Victoria, especially down some of the back roads and the back lanes, and you're like, whoa, you can feel it. So yeah, it was an easy book to write. The hardest part was picking only 30 stories.
Yeah, that's like trying to pick a favorite child, especially after you did the tours for so many years, and you know,
and every night was different tour. Yeah. Like we learned over 100 stories, well over 100. We had over 500 stories in the repertoire. Yeah. So it was a really tough thing to go, this one's good, no, not to this one, yes to this one, not to this one. And I even said to the publisher, I'm like, do you want me to write like 2 books? And they're like, nope, let's do the first one, see how it goes, you know. Yeah. And now they're like, we want you to do the Canada book, and then we can talk about a more Victoria's Haunted, right? And do it. But they said, we don't want you to do the first one and then come up with another one right away, because it will affect sales or something. I don't really understand all that. I'm like, okay, whatever you want.
This is a question I like to ask, especially like somebody like you who doesn't go out and do investigations.
Yeah.
Because you have a little bit different point of view. In the places that you've written about, because you said you go to most of these places and you've been there. Do you find that the majority of them are residual or intelligent haunting?
Interesting question. Now, so sometimes this is something I've learned in the last, I'd say, 10 years. Energy is energy. That's the first thing I learned.
Yeah.
The living have energy just like the dead do. So if I go somewhere and some place is super haunted and everyone's like, that place is super haunted. If I walk in there and there's 40 or 50 other people in there, I'm not going to be able to tell because I pick up on energy.
Right.
So unless that energy comes to me and goes, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to pick up on it because there are 40 or 50 strangers' energies that I don't know.
Right.
That is going to be just kind of coming through the scanner. So I'm not going to know who's who, right? If I go with 2 or 3 people and I know them because you just sort of know their energy, right?
Right.
It's like, you get home, you know if someone's home or not.
Right.
We just know. And it's that same kind of thing. So if I go with 2 or 3 people who I know really well and we walk into a place, boom, I'm going to know right away. So I find most of the time those ones are more the intelligent ones. I've never run into any that are strictly residual, not me personally.
Yeah.
I know they're out there, but they don't seem to want to, they don't connect because they don't care. And I think if you don't really go looking for them, you're not going to connect with them. Any investigations I've done are usually for friends, and they're usually in private homes.
Yeah.
And I don't take an EKG or EKG did it again. I don't take that little electronic thingy. I don't take any of that. I just go in and I just sit in the space and I absorb, and they tell me what they want me to know. Right? Like I describe it as someone taking a handful of pictures and videos and shoving them through the back of my head.
Yeah.
Because I can walk in and go, oh, okay, you're pissed off. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I totally understand why. Okay, cool. And a lot of times I said to someone, I'm like, I'm a human ghost relationship counselor. Like I'm not gonna go into your home and go, ghosts be gone. Like that's not my thing. I'm gonna go in there and go, okay, so you're freaked out and you're pissed off. Okay, how can we figure this out? 9 times out of 10, I tell my living friends, if you just tell this person, hey, you're freaking me out, like you can stay,
right,
but you need to stop freaking me out.
Yeah.
They will stop.
Yeah.
100%. So I do a lot of that. So I guess in that regard, I guess I do some investigations, but not like the traditional sense.
Yeah.
But I've gone on a few investigations with friends who it's been really important to them that I go. And I go because if it's important, then I'll go. But what we talked about earlier, I ask, like, how do you do your investigations? Are you respectful? Are you provoking? Because if you're provoking, I'm not going. Like that just makes me. I would be as uncomfortable as if I walked into Starbucks with someone and they started yelling at everybody. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like that would be as equally.
Well, I mean, also if you walk into somebody's house and just start yelling, they're probably not going to take that.
It's not going to go well. No, It's not going to go well. They're just going to leave.
Right.
And that's why I'm a big believer in repeat visits, because just like I wouldn't walk into someone's house and be like, so who are you? What are you doing here? How long have you been here?
Right.
I think they need to know that they've got nothing to fear from you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not a threat and you're not there to hurt them. Like,
I've also found that I think that a lot of times they know your intentions when you walk in the door.
Yes.
Like without you saying a word. They just automatically know. Yeah.
Yes. And that's energy based.
Yeah.
And I find that when I meet people, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I read intentionality very clearly.
Yeah.
And that can be a blessing and a curse, right? Depending on the situation.
No, I'm exactly the same way. Like everything you're saying, exactly. And like you were saying with a bunch of people in the room, I'm not going to be able to read any kind of dead energy there.
No,
because it's so much with all the living people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it took me a while to figure that out, because I'd go somewhere that was like super. I remember going to the Whaley House in San Diego, and everyone said, "Oh, it's or Wally House," or whatever, however you say it. And everyone's like, "Oh, it's so haunted." And I walked in, and there were like 30 other people there, but I didn't register that. I went, "Doesn't feel haunted to me."
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of walked through the house, nice old house, great history. Okay, bye. And it took me a while to figure that out. So I wish I was smarter, but I'm not. And it took a while. But now that I know that, and I am much more intentional about observing and responding to energy in people, rather than what they're telling me or presenting to me or telling me, like it is very, people are not good at hiding their intentionality through energy. They're not good at it. And yay. I'm glad. But it's what led me to do my counseling certificate. It's what led me, because I can do that really well. Because you can be sitting there telling me something, and I'm like, that's not really what's going on here. And not from a psychological point of view, just from an energy point of view.
I think that's what took me into the medical field for 20 years, and I worked emergency medicine for 15 of that. And,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And just being intuitive and an empath, and just knowing what I should do in that moment. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that, because my new job. So I worked for the police department for 14 years, and then my new job is I'm like 911 for people on social benefits.
Yeah.
So again, reading energy, right? Yeah. Reading intentionality. Like, are you selling me a line, or you really need some help? Because I'm here to help, but I don't want to. Like, policy and procedures are one thing, but you lying to my face, that's another
right.
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. I never even thought of that. But yeah, you're right. That energy reading would 100% feed into what we end up doing.
Yeah. Because originally, when I was a teenager, I apprenticed to be an audio engineer. To do live sound for concerts.
Nice.
And the guy that I apprenticed, I was serious about it from the time I was 15. 15, they would bring me in the back door at the bar, and I had to sit at the soundboard because I was underage. But from the time I was 15 and 19, the guy that I apprenticed with, he back in the 80s and 90s was the sound guy for Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue, huge rock bands. Cool. Like, he was the real deal.
Yeah.
And I apprenticed with him for 4 years. And so when I graduated high school, I was going to go to college, for mass communication, and go into either TV or go into radio, or, decide what I wanted to do. But audio engineering, audio was a big part of it. And then life has a way of steering you. And somehow I got into the medical field because I was raised by my grandparents. And so I grew up taking care of them and their health issues. And so I just felt comfortable in a medical setting, for one. And that's the universe put me exactly where I was supposed to be, I guess. And now I feel like, now I do the podcast full time, and I'm lucky to do that. Nice. And work from home and do the podcasts and do the paranormal for a living. And I retired from the medical field because of PTSD and all that stuff. But I think for me, that journey had run its course. Yeah. And then the universe was telling me, okay, it's time to do something completely different.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest part of that battle to personal happiness is being open to what it's trying to tell you.
Yeah.
It's huge. And a lot of us don't. It's like, if I just hang on for 4 more years,
Right.
And I had a pretty sweet gig at the police department. It's not that I hated my job, but it had run its course. And I remember Jason saying to me one day, he's like, what do you think about moving to Prince George? And I laughed. I'm like, no. And then I started to think about it. And the next time we came up for a visit, we drove around, and I'm looking at it going, could I live here? Does this have everything I need?
Yeah.
There's a Costco, so yes. But I kind of went, you know what? I'm actually really open to this. And bang, bing, bang, boom. Within 3 months, we both had new jobs, and we were moving. And that was it. Our house sold in 2 hours. Like, holy crap. It was fast.
Well, that right there should tell you made the right decision.
Right? And I'm still getting texts from friends being like, hey, you want to grab coffee? And I'm like, I don't live there anymore. Like, I didn't sneak out of town or anything, but, just some people don't catch up. But it's pretty funny. So it happened really, really quick, but it's been a brilliant move. It's been really good for us. So I'm thrilled we're up here.
Well, and the whole empath energy work gift, I don't think we're unique in that. I think that me and you have just fostered it.
Yeah.
And
100%.
learn how to use it. It becomes stronger the more you use it. I think that's an innate ability that everybody has. But like you were talking about, I think a lot of people grow up like you did, where they're told no, that it's your imagination. I think people turn it off at some point in time.
They do. And I think that was one of the very first lessons I learned on the journey was we have instincts. At that time, I called it instincts. Yeah. We have instincts for a reason. Listen to them.
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable going to that situation or being in that room or being with that person, for freak's sakes, listen to it. Yeah. Like, don't ignore that. It's there for a reason. It's what's kept us alive. Yeah. that was huge for me. That was a big shift because I was raised by a very polite English family. So, someone could be cutting off your arm and you're supposed to smile and say, please don't. I find that offensive. You know what I mean? Like, we are not a people who call it. We are not a people who call out, bad things. So, I really rebelled against that. Much to my parents' great delight. And that was a big thing for me. Was that was probably my first lesson, and then slowly, I learned to embrace the empathic and the energy. However, that being said, I have friends who are like, I've never felt anything. Yeah. And I'm like, don't feel bad. I wear glasses, and they look at me blankly, and I'm like, it's just another sense. So. Right. I wear glasses, but I have an excellent sense of smell.
Right.
I hear better out of my left ear than my right ear. You know what I mean? Like there's just, we're all different, and that's okay. So some people are going to be killer at picking up energy, and those people are amazing, and I have a lot of respect for them, and I love being around them. And then you've got other people who are like, like oatmeal. They're never going to pick up on that, and that's okay.
And also I've found that I call them the paranormal coolers. Because those same people can walk into a location that I've been to and had many experiences, and as soon as they walk in, you will get nothing. Down. Yeah,
I know. I've had that too, and I don't know what that is. Maybe that's something in their intentionality.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, I should tell you the other reason I don't go on paranormal investigations. I'm absolutely terrified of something following me home. Absolutely, my biggest fear. That and snakes. I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who that happened to. He was not a believer in paranormal, but he was in a paranormal group as the photographer. And he went home and he called me about, I don't know, 2 weeks later, and he's like, so I got a problem. And what had happened was, he's like, I got home from that investigation. It was super late. And it was like 3 a.m, and I went to bed, and 5 a.m. I hear a knock on the window. And he goes, I got up and I looked, of course, there's nothing there. And then, because he neglected to tell me, so he's been getting knocks on his windows, all the windows in his place at different times of the day and night. And he neglected to tell me he's on a 4th floor condo.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, yeah, dude, no, that's not good. He goes, I feel like something really wants to, like, either tell me it's there or wants me to let it in. And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. So we had a little conversation about that, and I went over and did some, light work kind of thing, and he didn't get bothered anymore. I just very calmly and nicely said to whatever it was, you can't be here. This is not going to work. He's not someone who's interested in hanging out with you, I'm afraid. So I did like a paranormal breakup, I guess. But that's my biggest fear. I don't want anything following me home. I really don't. I'm not scared of it.
Yeah.
I just don't. It's draining.
Yeah.
It's draining. The last major paranormal thing that happened to me in my own home was I was in bed, and our bedroom had double closets, and one of them was pretty empty. And Jay was gone. The house was empty. At that point, we had no pets, and we don't have ducted heating or cooling. And I'm in bed. It's like 11:30. I'm reading. I got to go to work the next day. And I hear in the closet, with the doors closed, I hear the hangers hitting each other. Clink, 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 very clearly, very distinctly. And I remember looking over at it going, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I mean, the option is I can run into the night and go to a hotel, but why?
Right.
So I just looked at it, looked back at my book, kept reading, and about 20 minutes later, I went to sleep. Because what are you going to do?
Right.
Like, what are you going to do? And honestly, if that energy had wanted to scare me, it would have done it. It would have found a different way to do it.
Right. It was just trying to get your attention.
I was just trying to say, hey, I'm here. And in that house, that wasn't a shock. That house was, it had a lot going on. We found out our house and the neighbor's house are actually built on the site of a First Nations village. And when they built those houses, they had to stop construction because they found 6 bodies in a cave that were buried there. I'm like, oh, great. I'm so glad I know that now. That place had more of a transitory energy. It would kind of come and go.
Yeah.
And I think it stopped in on probably 5 or 6 houses on our cul-de-sac. I think it just wanted to know what was going on, and it came by our place a few times and hung out. I wasn't scared, but I was like, ugh, like, it's like, oh no. it's like when you realize the roof is leaking, you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Another thing to take care of.
I've always, the empath stuff with the dead, I've always likened it to like a lighthouse in the dark. Like we're a lighthouse in the dark. They're attracted to us. They're like, oh, it's somebody that can fucking sense me. They can see me. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've said that, like a street light on a foggy street.
Yeah.
And they're drawn to it. They're drawn to it 100%. And I make that decision. Honestly, it's funny you say that, because I have made that decision walking to a place where I in my mind, I see it as like I'm in a car with the windows up.
Yeah.
And I'm going through a safari park. And I want to pet the lions, but I don't want the lions to eat me. Right. So I drop my window just enough that I can get my hand out and pet the lions, but I can pull it back in if they try and bite me.
Yeah.
And that's what I do mentally, is I throw up the barriers when I walk into somewhere, so that sometimes I think even if there is energy there, it's not going to know that I can pick up on it. And other times, like especially if I'm trying to help out a friend who's having something weird going on, I'll walk in and very deliberately like protect myself, but drop those barriers. Be like, all right, buddy, what's going on? What are we doing here? And then things happen. Things come in, or let me know, or whatever. But sometimes I'm not even thinking about it, and I'll walk into a place and be like, whoa, did not prepare for this. So I agree with you. I 100% agree with that. Lighthouse or bright light, and in regards to ability, I had a good friend say to me one time, because I said, how come some people can and some people can't? Like, what's the criteria there? She goes, do you remember in the old days you had to have a TV antenna to get TV? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, some people's antennas are taller than others, and the taller your antenna, the more you're going to be able to pull in. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. So that made me feel better, rather than just, why am I a freak? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So all of your books are available online on Amazon, Kindle, and Barnes & Noble, Audible.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Everywhere. The only one that isn't is the new one, The House That Never Said Goodbye. That one's only available on Amazon.
If you got Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free as well.
It's they're fun. They're a fun thing to do. And then we do our podcast. It's out there, Ghosts and Bears, and there's websites, all the various websites and social media. Look for Ghost Story Guy. That's my everything handle. So everybody can go to ghoststoryguy.com and they can. Your books are there, the podcast is there, all that stuff is there. If you're listening to this, they can find Ghosts and Bears podcast. So yeah, for sure.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for coming on today. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Eric. Me too. That was awesome. I hope we do it again.
Yeah, for sure. When the Calgary book comes out, we'll have to have you back on and chat about it.
That'd be fun. That was a trip. That was a journey. That was a personal journey. I'm a little worried now. I was reading back what I'd written, and I'm like, because they sent me the edited version to kind of go over and fix some stuff. And I'm like, is this too personal? Like, is someone going to be reading this going, I don't care about you. Like, why are you telling me this? But it was such an intrinsic part of my development as someone who's sensitive to stuff that it was almost impossible to write those stories without my heavy personal experience in them. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of reception it gets.
All right. Thank you again, Ian.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
Yeah, you're very welcome. My pleasure. All right, everybody. Y'all stay safe out there. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to The Unseen Paranormal. Join me next Wednesday with a brand new guest. And please rate, review, share, and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. This helps more people discover the show. You can connect with me over on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or join us in the Unseen Paranormal Lounge group on Facebook. Until next time, remember, some of the scariest things are unseen. You have come to the end of the line.